So Otto, the first question goes to you. You first saw Aisholpan in a photojournal essay, and you were immediately taken with her and started a correspondence with the photographer Asher Studensky. Can you tell us a little bit about that early part of the process of becoming intrigued and then wanting to figure out how to secure the rights to the story?
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Susan, and hello again to everybody. It's lovely to see you all again, and I'm so happy to see Shine doing things despite the situation that we're all in. Shine Global was the first organization that ever believed in this project, and the first one to really help me sort of professionalize it, and I'll forever be grateful to you and Albie and Alex and all the folks on your board and your members who were amongst the first to believe in this project. So thank you very much. How did I find out about it? Yes, I saw some photographs of Aisholpan the day that they came out on a BBC travel website. I think it was on a blog. I was at work in New York, and I saw, and I've been looking for a subject. You know, I've been looking for a feature documentary subject, and I was just incredibly struck by this photograph of it. It's the famous one. It's the one that we used on the poster. It's the one of Aisholpan standing with her eagle on her arm, with this fantastic mountain range, what I would learn were the Altai Mountains behind her. This incredible sort of prehistoric looking predator bird. And then this, angelic sort of 12, 13-year-old. And I was arrested by the photograph, and it to me, the photograph had a lot of promise in it. It had this landscape. It had this incredibly enigmatic, character from what you could see, and then of course this bird as well, which was, so it had it had a lot packed into that photograph that was really interesting to me. So I didn't know what to do, so I saw the photo credit, which was this Asher Studensky guy. So I found him on Facebook, and I guess I was the first person to talk to him. He subsequently got like a flood of interest, but I had a Skype chat with him, and we talked about going over there to see if the family would be interested in making a film. And he agreed to sort of chaperone me and take me out there and introduce me. And that's exactly what we did. I think about 2 weeks after I saw the photograph, he got on a plane in Russia, and I got on a plane in New York, and we met in Ulaanbaatar, in the capital of Mongolia. And then we went up to the mountains to see her and to talk to the family and to meet them. And yeah, went from there.
So you made that first trip to Mongolia, as you say, to meet the family, and you had no idea really whether they would agree to be a part of the film. That was a big risk that you took.
Yeah, I don't know how calculated a risk was. I mean, I think I was just pretty foolhardy at the time, and I don't know, keen for adventure. I did have a cameraman with me. We'd been doing some filming, with me and this guy Raymond. We'd been doing some filming in Cairo. So it wasn't actually that I left from New York. I think we came from there, and he came with me kind of on a whim, in case there was going to be something to film. Maybe we could get like a little YouTube clip out of it or something. Didn't know quite what it was going to be.
So what was that first meeting with Aisholpan and her parents and her siblings like?
It was lovely. I mean, it was I was nervous because, like you say, I was kind of out there on a limb. But it was clear that they were used to tourists coming through with cameras and stuff like that. I think it's not that there had never been any filming up there. I think the BBC had been out there and done some nature photography stuff, So they kind of, they got the idea, they understood the idea of a documentary film or a nature film. And I think they were pretty much ready to go. I mean, certainly when we sat down, as I say, I was kind of like, oh, would you be, should we do this? Could we do this? What sort of things could we film? And that's when, her dad was sort of stood up and said, oh, well, we're about to steal a baby eagle from the side of the cliff. Is that the kind of thing that you want to film? And I was like, absolutely. So, we weren't that prepared. We certainly weren't well funded. But we got there at the right moment, for sure.
I have to ask you to tell us the story that you've already shared with us in the past about shooting that. So just for those of you listening, just imagine this. This is literally the first day of shooting the film, the day that Otto and his crew caught the.
I mean, that was it. I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll shoot, I'll film almost like a teaser. That was another idea I had. It's like, if I could just sort of film her moving about in her landscape and get a kind of like a mood thing, I could take that back to New York and I could get some financing and make this thing. But so we did have some cameras with us. We had Asher Svidinsky. So I had Asher, the photographer, with me, and then I had Chris Raymond, who's credited as additional camera on the film. And we had 3 cameras. We had a C100, a fairly good Canon camera, film camera, which Chris had brought with him. And we had Asher, who had his photography camera, which also filmed video. He'd never turned on the video function. He'd never shot any video before. And then I had a GoPro at the bottom of my bag, one of those small clip-on cameras. And the family were pretty clear with us that it was going via a translator, that it was going to be, that it's not unusual for mother eagles to swoop down as you try to remove the baby from the nest. So they were only going to do it once. So we had to kind of film it like a live sports event. I just had to sort of cover it a bit. So Chris Raymond, I hope he doesn't mind me saying, but he was afraid of heights. Yeah. But he was the properly the trained cameraman. So I had to put him on the ground, on ground level with the best camera, and he filmed sort of a wide shot of the mountainside. And then Asher and I went up the side of the mountain and hid behind a rock, sort of parallel, adjacent to the nest. So we could film without being in Chris's shot. And then the last thing I did is we put the GoPro on Aisholpan so that you could kind of get her point of view. And that ended up, 99% of that was rubbish and unusable and unsteady. But the moments where she's sort of hypnotizing the bird and stuff, that was all gold, which just sort of happened, luckily, that to get that on a camera. And that does annoy me now, because if you look back at the film, especially when you see it on a big screen, and if you look carefully in a cardigan, you can see the GoPro.
Only you, the only person in the world who sees it.
Still annoys me to this day. And like, if I'd had a couple of runs at it, I would have cleaned all that up and we would have done it differently. But no, as it was, we just had to film it like a live sports event, right? Multiple angles, as much coverage as you can.
And the effect is extraordinary. I mean, I don't know how many times I've seen that scene, and I still get scared when I see it. Are they going to make it? What's Nergeyev tying himself to?
Yeah.
How is he holding her? And then, when you first told that story about Chris being afraid of heights, I just can't even imagine what that must have been like.
Well, I think we were more scared than they were, for sure. I mean, like that mountain, that sort of cliff face is not too far from the summer home where they set up their nomad camp in the summer. And like even Aisholpan's younger siblings, they just fly around those rocks, like they're totally fearless, oblivious to to that situation. It's kind of like their backyard. So
Well, you were very
I think
brave.
we were more concerned than they were.
Well,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
it's a spectacular uh, piece of photography. Stacey, you are a very successful producer. You're really busy. You always have multiple projects going. And you are a wife and mother of boys who are then really latency age kids. What was it, when did you come aboard the film, and what was it about the film that made you decide to participate?
Well, first of all, that moment that you guys were just talking about, I love the moment where Aisholpan is like going like this to the eagle. It's truly one of my favorite moments in the film.
Yeah.
And I have seen it many, many times also, but I always think about it, like even now, sometimes when I'm like trying to like psych someone out in my head, I'm like doing that thing, you know.
Do it to your kids now.
Exactly. Okay, I got your number. I got
the
you.
mother eagle is watching.
You know, it's a funny story. I was actually at Sundance Film Festival. I had a short film that was premiering. And as you heard, Otto had already started filming, and he had gone out and gone on this trip to Mongolia. And lucky he did, because there would be no film if he hadn't just gotten on a plane and done that. And one of our executive producers was talking about this project and was saying, oh, there's a project, it's filming right now, it's early stages, they're looking for a producer, and told me a little bit about it. And I like just immediately was like Googling and trying to read stuff and was so interested in this story. And then later that evening, as things happen at Sundance, I'm at a party, and my entertainment attorney, who also is Otto's entertainment attorney, was also talking about this project. And so I had these two people that were like kind of talking, and I thought, oh, I need to meet Otto as soon as I get back to New York. Now, he was off filming part of this movie, but I was completely determined that I was going to meet him and produce this movie. And I remember even that first meeting, we met in Soho, and he showed me some scenes. And I mean, I was immediately like, I'm on board. Like, I don't even, no matter what, I want to be part of this project. And I think that this is a very, very special film for me. So that was just like this instinctive gut reaction. But I think most of my projects, I feel like that's how I feel. Like, I have to be part of this project. And, mostly because these films, they take many years. And I always think like, is this what I want to be thinking about all of the time? Is this what I want to make sacrifices for when I have to leave my children? Because, I went back to Mongolia with Otto, and it has to really, really matter, and that's, sort of this calculus that I often do. I mean, obviously, I need to make a living also, but then there's this thing of, okay, I really, really want to make this. And this project, I just immediately responded to.
Yeah, understandably. So Otto, you were totally on board yourself right from the very beginning. And so you faced the classic problem that doc filmmakers face, which is, how do I do this? How do I fund this? You were at the time working at a very prestigious ad agency doing branded entertainment films. And I imagine that was both a plus and a minus, because that gave you so much experience making short form films and traveling around the world, and yet it was very, very demanding. And you really literally put your money where your mouth was and self-financed most of the shooting of this film.
Yeah.
So how did you manage to balance all this, both financially as well as practically?
Honestly, I don't know that I really did balance it that well. I think I it was more about getting through it. The very, very happy day that I met Stacey and you guys at Shine and some of the folks at Warrior Poets, it did change a lot for me, because I wasn't alone anymore. Because at that point when I met you all, I was out of money. In fact, I was in the red. Like I'd actually taken out what I now understand to be a really ugly high interest loan from my Citibank folks. And yeah, I had some life savings. I think it was about $40,000 at the time. And that was the other thing, I wasn't married at the time. We didn't have a baby on the way. I guess I was in the right place to be that stupid, really. So I was using all of my holiday time, and my paid time off. I'd sort of accrued a lot of days, so I was able to take off from the day job for sort of 2-3 weeks at a time. And if I timed it right over public holidays, I was able to squeeze a bit more out of it, which was important because it takes so long to get there. But yeah, it was pretty reckless, and I don't think it would be a set of decisions that I would take, today, 5-6 years later.
But how great you were able to at the time. It was your passion, and that's so often.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I just really, I wanted to crave, like Stacey says, that sort of, I think you guys felt it too when I sat down with you. It's like, here's a hell of a, this is just a one heck of a story that we've got to.
Oh yeah, we knew that we really wanted to be part of it. For
yeah,
sure.
I mean, it's kind of, right in your wheelhouse in terms of children and a purposeful message. So it was a happy set of meetings, because it did bring balance and kind of professionalism to what up until then had been very much a shoestring messy operation.
I think you're selling your short there. You're selling yourself short there. But Stacey, what to you was your greatest challenge in producing this film?
I mean, there were a few. The biggest challenge was that it was set in Mongolia, which is not an easy place to get to. It takes, many days from New York to get to where this family was living. And they speak another language. The language is not a common language in New York. So even transcribing the footage that Otto shot when I first came on board, we were outsourcing it to Kazakhstan to have people, remember this, transcribe it there, because we couldn't find anyone at the time in New York to do those transcriptions. And even getting the equipment in, on our shoot when we went to Mongolia, and we did not have, a ton of equipment. I mean, it was a really pared down package and pared down crew. But I remember we were at the airport in Ulaanbaatar, and we were catching the connecting flight to Ulgi, which is the closest big city to where they live in northern Mongolia. And they were motioning to us and speaking, another language, and basically trying to tell us that our equipment weighed too much and might not be getting on this airplane.
That's right.
And those planes don't fly every day. This isn't like every day a flight goes. This is like many days later a flight goes. And we were going to film the Golden Eagle Festival, and we needed this equipment. And I remember looking out the window and seeing our bags of gear on the tarmac and thinking to myself, I'm just gonna pray it gets on the plane. I have no idea. Like, I've done everything I can do. And luckily we got there and all the equipment got on the plane. But, it was just like logistic after logistic. That was very, very challenging, very, very challenging.
Remember that the name of the national carrier in Mongolia is Mayat, M-I-A-T.
Yeah.
And the locals told us that it stands for maybe it'll arrive tomorrow.
I forgot that.
Yeah. But that was it. There was only a couple of flights a week, and then sometimes the weather was such that they just wouldn't go.
Oh boy, that's where your faith kicks in.
Yeah.
As Alex was saying before, Aisholpan was the first female eagle. The first female eagle huntress. That's surprisingly hard to say.
Well, we got to be careful about that.
In generations.
There is evidence that there have been other women who hunted with eagles over the centuries. there's some evidence there, but certainly she's the first one in a region. She's the first in a family as far as they can trace back, and she was the first to go to that big eagle too. Yeah.
And that's my question.
The festival, obviously, too.
Pardon me?
Right? The first at the festival also.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, plenty of firsts, just not them all.
What do you think it was that helped persuade Nurgayev? I hope I'm not mispronouncing.
Yeah, no, you are. Yeah,
good.
That's good.
What do you think it was that persuaded her father Nurgayev and his father to give Aisholpan their blessing, seemingly so readily?
Yeah, it had been a process. It's telescoped in the film, but I believe it started when. Well, I mean, just broadly speaking, Agalai Nagayev, her dad, he's just, I think, an all-round good man, and a supportive father, and the person, and a kind of person who I think can see beyond, petty-minded distinctions. But Aisholpan had also earned the right, like her brother. Again, this was before I arrived and filmed, but her brother was drafted to the army. He was, he had to go and serve his conscription time or whatever it is. And he'd left behind his eagle, and his dad had obviously trained him. And she picked up all of his jobs around the ger, around the, with the herd and what have you. So she was doing all these boy jobs. She's canny. She's smart. She had always loved the eagles, as you hear a mother say in the film. Since she was a baby, she would crawl over and interact with the thing. So she'd always had an eye for the birds. So when she started doing her brother's work, her angle with her dad was like, well, I'm doing his work. Why wouldn't you train me like you trained him? And being a fair-minded guy, he's like, all right, yeah, you've got a point. So they had been doing some training, and that's what Asha took the photographs of, was her training and sort of her dad getting the measure of her with his bird. And then by the time we got there, she was sort of deemed ready for her own bird. So that was the flow of it.
So Stacey, when you went with Otto to Mongolia on that trip, what struck you about Aisholpan's relationship with her mother and her mother's feeling about her becoming an eagle huntress? Because you get the sense in the film that the mother goes, oh, she never wants to be inside with me. She always wants to be outside. But was she also equally supportive, do you think?
I think so. I mean, I remember when I first arrived thinking, like, how am I going to connect with this family? Because we don't speak the same language, and we're only there for a short period of time. And like with documentary filmmaking, you really want to have time to connect with the people you're making a film about, either ideally before the cameras start rolling, you want to have that time to connect. Luckily, Otto had already had this prior trip and had already connected with them. But I thought, okay, now I'm this new person. How am I going to connect with them? And I remember with Aisholpan's parents saying to them, like, oh, I'm a mother too. And let me show you pictures of my children. And I showed them pictures of my two boys. And, their faces lit up. And I remember thinking, like, here's something that we all share. We all are so proud of our children and love our children so much. And clearly her mother could see that she was so passionate about becoming an eagle hunter and about this craft and about getting noticed for this. And you just it was almost like she couldn't deny her that. It was like in her, and her eyes would light up. And I feel like any parent wants their child to be passionate about something, and maybe it's not the thing that you sort of thought they would be passionate about. And that was my sense of it.
Yeah.
But she didn't want
universal language.
Yeah, it was sort of this universal language of parenting, and I felt like we really bonded over that.
Yeah. I'm sure you're right. So Otto, when Aisholpan and her father go to the festival, they are initially greeted by surprise from the other hunters, and a certain amount of skepticism. And again, probably like the process with her father and her grandfather accepting her, probably received this sort of telescoped in the film. But what's striking in the film is that clearly she wins them over, and it seems like she wins them over fairly quickly. She's performing so well, and but was that accurate? Or, and if they were more accepting, why do you think they were?
Well, I think you've got to sort of segment it a little bit. I had been to interview a subset of her community, specifically male eagle hunters. Mm-hmm. And we're actually even pals of a dad. Everybody kind of knows everybody over there. But there's a village. It's called Sanxay, and it's sort of on the outskirts of Ulgi, and it's where a number of the eagle hunters live. So before the festival, I had gone around and I'd spoken to these. I'd literally gone from tent to tent, from gur to gur, in this village of Sanxay, where you've got this high concentration of male eagle hunters. And we'd had conversations about eagle hunting and how it was passed down and what the skills are. And then I'd ask, and what about women? Is there ever been a female eagle hunter? And that's where you see them all, in the Greek chorus going, no, 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 drop. And they all said that to a man, there's no such thing. And I think that Ash's photographs had sort of, had filtered out into the world and become a big deal, and they were sort of upset a little bit that this girl had sort of won all this acclaim, yet perhaps not earned it in their eyes.
Right.
So there was no such thing. And then we were careful to read the rules. There was no rule that said that a woman couldn't compete in the festival. So we did turn up kind of out of the blue. And yes, there was some sort of surprise and interest, and some of the men were pretty off with her. And but as you say, she started to perform really well. So I think the crowd, not necessarily all the male eagle hunters, but the crowd and the community and some of the tourists there were tourists there as well. They were intrigued and they started to get behind her. And then, you see her, there's the moment I think which won the whole tournament for her is where she breaks the tournament record.
Yes.
Or the fastest, I forget, what is it, Stacey? It's like 6 or 7 seconds or something that she does it in, where the bird comes from the top of the mountain to her arm. And it's crazy, right? It's dead quick, it's really quick. And that smashed this record, and that's when I think everybody sort of sat up and realized that, this is something quite special that's happening. So I think that created groundswell. But what I will say is I went and did another round of interviews the day after she won the festival with same sort of subset of male eagle hunters. And at that point, there was sort of a bit of sort of salty disbelief that this girl had accomplished what she had. And it didn't matter a damn, because unless she could go out and winter, successfully hunt, then she wasn't really even she wasn't fit to carry the moniker of eagle hunter.
I think from the perspective of the viewer, you laugh really when you cut from one face to another.
Yeah. It worked out nicely. That certainly wasn't planned. That was something that came through in editing. It happened time and time again when I would ask them, so is there a female eagle hunter? And then I'd get this one word back, doc. No. And then I think our editor, Pierre, was the one who started to line them all up. And we're like, oh, that's interesting. There they go. That's interesting. There they go, like dominoes.
It became like a chorus,
Yeah.
I love that part. I just want to remind our viewer listeners that I've been asked one more question now, and then we're going to turn to you. So please feel free to start typing your questions in. So well, picking up at that point of the film, Otto, I remember this so vividly. So we met you, I think, the very end of 2014. You were going back that January 2015 to shoot, and you were going back to shoot the rest of the footage of her hunting in the wild with
the frozen scene. Yes.
And,
Wow.
and all of us have seen the film. We go, oh my God, this is so rugged. This is so cold. This is so remote. But what they don't know is what we knew, which is that less than a week before you took that trip, we had an ice storm in New York City. And you unfortunately slipped and fell on black ice, and you really shattered your collarbone, didn't you? And I thought, what's he going to do?
That's right.
It was a question whether you were going to need surgery or whatever, and you were on, obviously on painkillers. And I was really so worried, like, is he going? And then you said, no, I'm going. And every maternal instinct I had, that all I could think of was, but it's going to be below zero there. How's he going to put a jacket on?
Yeah.
So suddenly I was like the mother of a small child again. You know.
Yeah, it was true. You're dead. You're exactly right. I couldn't so that. So yes, I did. I fell badly just getting home to my apartment, and I shattered all my elbow. So
your elbow, yeah.
The rotator cuff or whatever it's called, I forget. And so they put pins in it. And then I was saying to the doctor, this was 2 days before, it was a day before, I did it a full day before I was supposed to fly. And I told the doctor, look, I'm going on a plane tomorrow. I've got to go out to Mongolia. I think the crew, my cameraman Simon had already left from London. Like the wheels were, the thing was already in motion. Aisholpan wasn't going to wait, like she and her dad were going out. She was eager to kind of prove her mettle.
Yeah.
So they weren't going to stick around. It was getting towards the end of winter as well, so I wasn't sure that there was going to be another. It was just basically there was no way. There was just no option but to go. So I told the doctor, "Well, I am going." He said, "No, you're not." And he said, "Well," I said, "Well, I am. I'm going." So they gave me like this bugger. I think he did this to spite me, but he gave me like this comically large cast. I think they used like 3 times the amount of stuff. So I had this bloomin' great piece of padding, which I could never zip up my jacket or anything. And then, it got down to about -50 at night there. I mean, it was brutally, brutally cold. You throw a cup of coffee and it's the sort of stuff at night where it would freeze by the time it hits ground. I mean, really powerfully cold.
The glamour of documentary filmmaking.
Yeah, and then you're jungling on your own, with these roads. There's no roads. Yeah. So it was just Vicodin, really. I think I just floated there and then, sobered up.
It was an extraordinary.
It wasn't fun.
I see one question here. Let's go to that one. David asks if Aisholpan's story has encouraged many eagle huntresses in the last few years.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so. I think there's she told me there were 3 or 4 competing a couple of years ago, and then I think that was up to I think I've heard a number 7, like there were 7 people there as well. So yeah, it's absolutely, and tourism is up in our region. They've had to build a couple more guest houses and things. There's thousands more and I believe some of your board members and members have been out there as well, which is fantastic, because they know as well as I do, every tourism dollar out there counts and goes a long way to preserving that way of life.
Yeah, I remember the wife of one of our board members said it was a beautiful trip. She was a little put off by the food.
Yeah, the food isn't great.
Food is not great.
The food is not great. No, it's not to my taste. There's a lot of goat, which is a greasy meat.
Yeah,
it's fair to say.
And bony too.
Yeah, but you gotta eat it.
Jane asks what Aisholpan is doing now.
Yeah, it's a great question. So the last time I saw her was in person was about 3 years ago. She came to my wedding in England. Her mum and her dad is busy because her dad's it was a translator. Her mum and Aisholpan came over. Dad couldn't because he's now the mayor of their region, I believe. You know, he's now been around the world, so he's the man who advocates, you know, if the bridge gets washed away or what have you, you know, for them to put in a new one. So they're still very much there in this, you know, same house. They've got the same winter house that you see in the film. I believe they've added a bathroom, a shower, which was something that, you know, a luxury they really wanted. But, you know, from what I understand, largely an unchanged way of life. Aisholpan is at school in Kazakhstan. She's finishing up high school, and she's deciding, I think, what she wants to study, whether she wants to go on and do medicine, which she's wanted to for a while. But I know that she's already, there's a lot of interest, I think, in her studying tourism. Sort of, I don't know, the sort of subject theory work of tourism, because she's become, you know, a real symbol and celeb. You know, she's a core celeb in Mongolia.
She's a lovely, lovely young woman.
Amazing young woman. Yeah.
Let's see. This is from Emily, and I think either of you might be able to answer this question. You've addressed some of this already, but what is your process for negotiating a film within a different language and culture where there is sensitivity around girls' rights?
You mean negotiating?
Let's see. Negotiating, well, it's a little general, negotiating a film. Negotiating a different culture, Emily adds.
One of the things, I can answer one part of that, because I think this was something that I was definitely sensitive to on when I became involved and on our trip there. We had a lovely woman who was the culture minister in Mongolia, who was a real friend of the film, and her name is escaping.
A young girl. Yeah.
And she really helped us. She was a woman in a political position there who was friends with the family and really helped act as sort of a go-between to help us sort of understand the culture, you know, make sure that everything was done, you know, in a proper way. And so that was really, really helpful. I mean, I think anytime you make a film in another place, one of the key things is to sort of understand cultures and customs and try to, even if you can't speak the language so that you're not, you know, inadvertently doing something that you don't mean to do.
And I learned a lot doing that as well. Like there was we did a, I don't know what you might think of as an exclusivity agreement early on, right? Because there's a lot of interest in a story and I was trying to get financing and I wanted to prove to the people in New York that I kind of had dibs on the story. And that needed to be translated into Mongolian and also into Kazakh. And then as the film took shape and it became kind of a real production, that's when we made contact with our young girl and we did like everything in triplicate and we made sure that the family was going to be taken care of and that their interests were properly represented and stuff. So there was a whole process there as well. I think as the film matured and developed, so did our
process.
Yeah, exactly.
Albie asks
Hi, Albie.
What was the toughest editing challenge?
Oh God, there was lots. I mean, I'll rattle off a few, and then Stacey, you pick up because you've probably got different memories to me than I do. You know, I was bothered about, because it was kind of a patchwork production, you know, I was worried about the different cameras that we used. You know, we had not so great cameras at the start of filming, and they were really beautiful 4K cameras towards the end of filming. So making sure all that meshed, which I'm not sure it entirely did. I mean, we did the very best job we possibly could, but that still bothers me a little bit. So, and then the other editing challenges. I mean, we spent a lot of time, didn't we, Stace, talking about like which act first? You know, do we put because the festival where she wins the festival, it feels like such a concluding moment.
Mhm.
You know, do we put that at the end, even though that's not how the timeline was? And then we have this arduous test in the middle, which would be kind of more of a traditional 3-act structure that you may be familiar with in narrative, right? You know, meet your protagonist. Protagonist is tested. Protagonist emerges victorious. But it wasn't true to the timeline, so we didn't do that. But we had our fair share of blow-ups, didn't we, Stacey? What else was rough in the
Definitely,
editing?
that was the big one. I mean, I think that there had been a discussion, there had been additional filming that happened sort of after our ending.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then sort of this question of, do
I
we,
agree with that.
you know, just because we filmed it doesn't mean it has to go in the movie, but you know,
Yeah.
it's hard to make that decision not to include something. And, you know, I know we felt like in the end, it was really Aisholpan accepting that she was proud of herself. You know, she won the festival, the elders in her community, whatever they thought of her, but it was really for herself. And so that final shot where she's riding off with her father and she's gone on the winter hunt and been successful, to me, I always felt like that was the end of the movie because she had proven it to herself and that was all that mattered.
I remember that conversation.
And her
That was a
family.
great conversation. That was
But
a
it's
great
not, yeah, it's
conversation.
not like a Hollywood ending. And so
Yeah.
there's like a lot of discussion. I know, like back and forth about.
Yeah, but I remember you making that point, and you're like, you know what, you're dead right. She doesn't need a village full of people to tell her that she's done a good job. You know. Yeah. I remember that.
So we didn't include this scene where she rides triumphant through the village.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I'm sort of, this is what ends up on the cutting room floor because
That's right.
anyway.
There was a
that was sort of
parade, wasn't
the
there, at
challenge.
Nadam?
The
At
parade,
the
she
annual
rode in
New-
the parade and all the elders were lined up and we didn't include it.
Yeah, that's right.
The sequel, Otto.
That's right. I'd forgotten about those scenes.
I think that the way you ended it was just so beautiful. It was so personal, and that was the victory right there. We have time for one last question, and I will ask that. This is for both of you. What was the most important lesson you learned from making this film, and how has it impacted your subsequent work?
Well, there is not, I mean, honestly, of all of the films I have produced, and at this point, there have been quite a few. This is the one that no matter what room I walk into, what age the person is, they light up. Oh, you produced the Eagle Huntress? Oh, you went to Mongolia? Oh, you met Aisholpan? I mean, it's no matter what, every single time. I mean, it's like truly that and I love it. I mean, I love hearing that. And I will say that the biggest lesson I learned is that I knew that I cared deeply about this project when I first heard about it, but it wasn't an easy film to raise money for. So, you know, thanks to Shine and to you and Albie for seeing the possibility, because many people did not see that possibility, which was very surprising to me. But it was a foreign language film in Mongolia, in a place most people had never heard of. I mean, just people couldn't quite imagine, they couldn't imagine that this could be the huge sort of commercial hit in theaters that it was. And it sort of taught me, like, if you believe in it, take the risk. It's worth taking the risk. It didn't have like commercial documentary hit written all over it, you know, when I first heard about it. And I think it's really important to follow your instincts, you know, about something. Yeah. So anyway, Otto, what did you learn?
Gosh, I learned so many things from it. Not to try and do these things yourself alone, frankly, is probably the biggest one. It's just way too hard, and you will trip up, you know. So definitely gathering your team of people, you know, who are going to go over the parapet with you is all important. I will forever be grateful, particularly to Stacey, for for picking me up, picking up the projects and sort of and ushering it through.
Mhm.
So that was a huge lesson. Yeah, try to get other people's funds, not your own. That can be a good trick in filmmaking. I learned everything, so much from it. It still affects the way I do things now, and I wonder, looking back now, because this is something that I'm starting to think about more and more, is like, if it were all to happen today, would I believe that I had the permission to go and tell that story? I think that has fundamentally changed over the last 5 years. Like, was it my story to tell? There were lots of people who were interested in telling it.
Would you be more
Yeah,
likely to assume it, or less today?
I think I'd definitely be more thoughtful about it for a whole heap of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm still incredibly proud of it, and everything that was learned on it. There's a lot of hard lessons in there, but it's just wonderful to see that people still enjoy it, still talk about it, that the family is happy and doing well, and proud of the film that we made about them, and that it's boosted that community, that it's raised Mongolia's profile in some ways. Yeah, it's all wonderful. Yeah.
And maybe it's been a really, hopefully, a very wonderful and thought-provoking experience for so many young girls who question what they're capable of, and
maybe it's that universality that gives me, which excuses the permission point. Maybe the fact that it has been adopted and taken in, by young girls' soccer teams, by dads taking their daughters, by all these things. It's kind of been fairly beloved around the world, I think, for its universal message. Because
definitely.
So that's good.
Well, we've come to the conclusion of our program. So Otto and Stacey, again, it's been very special to reunite with you tonight, and thank you for making such a beautiful and memorable film. And we will say to our viewer listeners, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed this
very much
discussion.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I love talking about this movie.
And we love Shine too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.